this video, we're going to talk about Attack on Titan, which I consider to be the perfect pandemic shut-in anime. And I'll go through the reasons why. Now, I wouldn't call myself specifically an anime fan, so I honestly don't have a lot to compare it to. There are animes I like, don't get me wrong. Inuyasha and Full Metal Alchemist, both the original run, and Brotherhood come to mind. It's one of the few animes I've obsessively watched repeatedly. I also liked Sailor Moon back in the day, which was perhaps my first anime. Unfortunately, I got the watered-down American versions first, but later on I saw the original Japanese version. But this video isn't about those animes. It's instead about me accidentally stumbling on Attack on Titan and suddenly finding it really relevant. So I watched season 1 years ago. I don't remember when, but since the first season aired in 2013, I'm going to say it was around then. I can honestly say I'd completely forgotten about the series. It was engaging, but unlike when I used to watch Inuyasha obsessively, I didn't have a platform to track it, and I kind of completely forgot about it. Then I saw on Hulu that there was a season 3, and since I was just looking for things to watch while I was shut in, I decided to start back at season 1. I mean, like most people, I'm just sitting around watching way too much filler TV. But in the opening episode, I was like, holy crap, does this feel relevant? So, for anyone that hasn't seen it, Attack on Titan is basically about these monsters called Titans. They are human-like giants who eat people. If you don't like a little bit of animated gore, this show isn't for you. I mean, usually gore isn't my thing, but the story's really good and it really held my attention. Anyway, what we believe to be the remaining humans on the planet have sheltered behind protective walls to guard them from the threat of these titans. In 100 years of peace, humans have come to be complacent in the structure behind these walls, and they don't think much of going outside of the walls. This alone seems to be lining up with my mental space right now. I don't know about all of you, but I am becoming scarily complacent in my routine. Starting this new YouTube channel has been a part of keeping me from drowning in do-nothingness. By the way, help this channel grow, like and subscribe, but moving on. Not everyone is sitting complacent behind these walls. A chosen few are going out there to battle the disease. By this I mean the Titans, of course. Thank you, essential workers, by the way. But for most people, their only job is to stay inside the walls and be safe. Remind you of anything? This brings us to our primary protagonist, Eren, a young boy who's heard tales of things like the sea beyond the walls and wants to see that big old world out there. Eren will eventually join the military to fight the disease. Titans. But while he's motivated by a very personal loss as a child, he's also motivated by, in a way, intense cabin fever. Even before the major death that sends him on his personal journey happens, he is hungry to break away from the restrictive walls limiting his world. And I know many of you are feeling that way right now. So in this particular moment, especially, he becomes an easy person to relate to. It is because Eren is in a way just partially obsessed with the idea of leaving, of being allowed for him to leave, that he's an extremely relatable protagonist right now. And it's great to go on a journey with him because his disease has a face and it can be fought. There's something to root for, forces to rise up against. It isn't invisible, and it can give you at least a little bit of mental strength to cheer for him. Now, it turns out the monster plot in the anime is far more complex than it's initially portrayed. 3 seasons later, you would hope it's still not as simple as monsters bad, humans good. That would be a rather boring story to track for 3 seasons. It gets so much more complex than that, and it's worth the watch, but I, personally, am an escapist. And when it comes to my fiction, I love magical worlds, monsters, and superheroes very distant from my own reality. That being said, this particular anime hit me on rewatch because of how hard it was hitting home. There's a moment early in season 1 that was just so much more relevant this time around. So as I explained earlier about the show, due to the appearance of Titans, the world was sent behind the walls 100 years ago. And in just hearing the narration about that, It seems like us a few weeks ago when everything about our world was changed by the increased threat of the virus, and how we've lived since has then become almost constantly about being behind our own walls. But just when the fictional world is comfortable in these walls that they live behind, just when they think the disease, in this case the Titans, are controlled, a more vicious form of the disease, a colossal Titan, comes and rips the wall down, flooding the secure space with the threat they thought they had held outside of those walls. And this is how COVID-19 has felt every time the threat level changed and more restrictions came to change the way we live. Now, within the world of Attack on Titan, there's more than one wall. In fact, there's more than one level of wall with the capital at its center. But while the survivors of the Fallen will make it into a safer, more interior wall, their presence creates a population increase in that area, changing the threat to something more tangible and everyday: economic stress. Which again, feels so real to this thing that's going on right now. Like, we all get the health threat, but the day-to-day of just having what we need to survive, the threat to so many people's jobs and livelihood seems far larger than the disease that got us here in the first place. And since a lot of us are living a life that's economically between a rock and a hard place right now, it's easy to relate to an anime about a literal rock, being the wall, and a hard place economically. In addition, watching the military of the anime take on this massive threat, and occasionally seeing how clueless those who know it's out there but haven't actually seen it are, you are again reminded how valuable our essential workers are. So while Attack on Titan was a random watch at first, I just couldn't watch it without thinking how very relevant it is to what's going on right now. And in a way, I'm also reminded, in general, why I love escapist fiction. I love that it isn't exactly about a disease, but instead rings true to the human experience of a threat, and all the levels of ways that affects us as humans. And that's what good escapist fiction should do. Sometimes I feel modern fantasy and sci-fi are too on the nose. It's too today or too meta. And I see that losing more of the audience than gaining an audience. But Attack on Titan, while it feels relevant right now, it's also distant enough that you can just get lost in it. And it's just a great watch anytime. And I'm glad that while I'm shut in, I've rediscovered it and I get to watch these heroes who have the means to fight a grand threat against the human race, even if it is just fiction. Thank you for watching, and if you thought I did a decent job on this video, please share it with your friends and tell them to subscribe, and please subscribe yourself. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.